Hey, soul sister, we've got another juicy episode for you. Today we're talking about people pleasing. Oh, that is such a huge topic. And I know I have been one to deal with that myself. And we have got Julie Shafer in the house to help us with this topic so we can learn how to do it differently, how to be differently, how to show up differently, and not go down that rabbit hole. Thanks for being here, Julie.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. Me too. Julie and I have been dancing in the realm of relationships and love for a while now. I consider Julie not only an authority but a dear friend, and I'm just so thrilled that you had some time today to hop in because this is a huge topic. But before we jump in, I want to at least let them know who you are, other than a dear friend and colleague. Julie is a psychologist, a relationship coach, and she's got a passion for teaching women in midlife how to find and create the love they've always longed for by showing up for themselves in a more authentic way. Boom, baby, it's what it's about. And after 2 decades working with women on their relationships and going through a few struggles of her own, Julie wrote her award-winning book, Loved: Relationship Rules for Women Who Thought They Knew the Rules. She's helped hundreds of people improve their relationships and their lives through her down-to-earth personal style. Yes, 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 yes. You have helped so many people. I know you're just chock full of wisdom when it comes to relationships. And, I would just actually love to just ask you, few struggles of your own. Might you want to share a little bit
Well,
about what you've gone through and some of your takeaways that you're able
yeah.
to now help others with?
Yeah. Well, I think the people pleasing thing hits close to home here. Um, I was married to a wonderful guy for 20 years. And as he accompanied me to my journey through grad school to get my PhD in psychology, something happened along the way. And I think his life wasn't what he had hoped it would be. And became a very difficult person for me to deal with. And so I had to learn a lot around what I wanted and setting boundaries and not giving in to him in an effort to keep the peace. you know? And boy, what an education, right? So yeah, I can talk a lot about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just the same thing for me. It's like, I've had my relationships,
Mhm.
the relationship struggles, and it's like, whoa, things do change and we have to kind of go with what's going on. And the more tools we have in our toolbox and the more we know ourselves and feel solid within ourselves, the more we can navigate those rocky roads that we that we sometimes find ourselves on. So
Well,
so
and
today,
I,
yeah,
I think it's really important to do that self-reflection and get to know yourself, because we don't really know ourselves very well if we don't go through that process. And we have to
yeah,
know ourselves when we hit these rocky points.
yeah, exactly. And that, you and I have chatted a lot about this around knowing ourselves because most people really have not been given that opportunity to really get solid within who they are. And then we go into these default patterns and all the things that we've learned about how we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to show up. And people pleasing is something that, in my opinion, is kind of like an epidemic, and especially for women DNA nurturers and not wanting to have conflict and all the things that come with people pleasing. So I would love to just like hand it over to you right now, and for you to like share a little bit about your perspective on people pleasing. How do you view it when it comes to relationships and navigating some of those challenging, edgy things?
Yeah, right. And like most things in life, I think it's not as easy as you're doing it or you're not doing it. Because if you ask me if people pleasing works, I'm going to say absolutely it works, right? It works in the short term. It helps make other people happy. It's kind of how we sort of show up and give back to other people. We'll cook for them, we'll clean the house, do the laundry, if it's our kids, we'll take them places and help them with their homework, and we're giving and giving and giving. And we need to do that. That means how you do a relationship, right? But if we take a step back from that and we look at, well, all this is flowing out of me, and what's coming back? And I think if you are a dyed-in-the-wool people pleaser, I think of it like a continuum, right? And if you're on like an extreme end of the continuum, either you aren't allowing things to come back, or you're just giving so much that other people are taking that for granted and they're not sending it back to you, right? Over time, we end up in this very depleted state because our cup never or doesn't get filled up enough, right? Yeah. So this is the whole idea behind, well, if I give everybody what they want, then I can have what I want. But if you've been working under that belief system for a while and you're here in midlife and it's like, wait a second, it really hasn't worked out that way.
Right. When's it my turn? It's like that. I mean, that's one of the things I love about women over 40, and most of the women I work with in their 50s and 60s, they're like, it's my time. It's my turn. I've given. And I love that you're talking about, yes, giving is beautiful. Showing up for people is beautiful. And it can go a little too far, and overshooting because of some of the beliefs that are underneath it. I know you didn't go there yet, but that overshooting of, I'm just going to give and give and give. And is it that I'm not receiving it back, or that I'm not allowing myself to be open to receiving it? And that's where it gets tricky. So unpack that a little bit more. Like, how do you pull that apart?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, when they get into people pleasing, if they're overdoing it, they're so focused on the other person or other people that they don't give themselves time. So this is where the discussion around self-love and self-care comes in. I think that's a little hard. Personally, I think it's hard to get my head wrapped around, well, what do you mean by self-care? Like, do I just go get a manicure? Like that? Somehow that never resonated with me. And self-love, sure. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good person. What's not to like about me? Right. And so it can be some terms a little squishy to kind of get your head wrapped around. Like, I understand conceptually what that means, but how does that function in my life? And so when I get down to how is this functioning, what I'm looking at is like, do you know what you want? Which I think you alluded to this earlier, is that oftentimes we haven't been given the space to have what we want or be able to express our opinions or desires. And so we've been so focused on other people, we don't even know.
And if we even ask ourselves, what do we want, or even have that desire? How many times when we were younger, people said, oh, that's just pipe dreams, or you really can't have that. So then you have the input from well-meaning parents going, well, and it happened to me, and my mother supported me so much in my dreams. And she also I wanted to be an actress, which I went on to be an actress. And yet she said, go to college and get a degree in something else, so you have something to fall back on. And that planted the seed of, it may not work out. So even if we did take the time to go, oh, I want this, we're bumping up against the yes, but that may not work out, or you may not be good enough to even have that, which adds another whole layer to it.
Oh, it certainly does. And people do that all the time because what they're dealing with is their own discomfort over you taking a risk. And so they sort of like
Yeah.
squelch that a little bit, and like your mom, she thought she was
Right.
being supportive, but there was
Right.
that.
She wanted to protect me. We know
Yes,
actresses,
yes,
what does an act how much, what does an actress do? She waits tables,
right,
and I was a great waitress. And so here
right.
she was trying to protect me. And at the same time, there was that, ooh, gosh. So here we
Right.
are, and we don't know who we are. And then we start to focus on the other, AKA people
Yeah.
pleasing.
Yes, people pleasing. The other thing that might give you a clue that you're struggling with this is, can you say no? Can you ask for what you need with some reasonable expectation that you might get it? Right? In your primary relationship or with your family or kids. And if you don't think you can ask for what you need with some expectation that people will respond, you might have been setting everybody up into a pattern of you being the giver and they're the takers, right? So that's another sign that there might be something going on here in this realm. I think it can be a little hard to identify because we are so rewarded for this behavior.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually want to like zoom in a little bit, like the behavior itself, people pleasing.
Mhm.
You know, from my definition of what a people pleaser is, it's we're talking about, we're pleasing other people. And if we dig deeper, how I view it is we're putting ourselves second, third, fourth, fifth. We're focusing on other people and not necessarily our own needs. And we're doing it for an outcome. Yes, maybe it's because we want to take care of somebody and we love them. And there might also be underneath it that if I don't do this, then
Yes.
maybe I'm not going to be taken care of, loved. And so I'm curious more about the dynamics of why people please, like from your perspective.
Right. So if you're going to dig a little deeper and get down
Yeah,
into some of the dynamics going on in our heads,
yeah,
what I gravitate to is around attachment styles and how we, okay, so if we do a little primer on attachment styles, about half of people are securely attached. That means they have some expectation that they should be receiving love and care from other people. Then that leaves the other half of the population with some doubt around that. And then we can divide those people up into two different camps where you can become anxious, which means you tend to like approach and get a little like you want to be really close because you don't.
that's me. Well, I'm more
Yep.
secure, but I definitely have had to do a lot of healing around the
Yeah.
anxiousness. It's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Let me,
Yes.
people, please do something to calm the waters and make sure that I don't lose love. I need that connection.
Right, right, right. Exactly. That's exactly it. Right. So we get really anxious and we sort of overdo it in an attempt to make sure that we're going to be able to keep the relationship.
Yeah.
And some people are avoiders and they don't really care. Right. And part of the problem is that it's like two ends of the magnet that come together and won't separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people who are anxious and then the people who are avoidant, if you happen to meet one, if you're an anxious person, you happen to meet a person who's avoidant, your people pleasing is going to go into full bloom because
You're not
that's
getting it. You're not getting
right.
that attention. They're
Right.
stepping away because they're like, this is too risky, too scary for me to open.
Yes, exactly. And then you're like, oh, no, just I can prove it to you.
Yes,
Right.
let me jump through more hoops. Let me please you even more. So
Yeah.
are you saying that anxious attachment style people tend to be more people pleasing?
You kind of blurped out on me. What was that?
I said, would you say that people that are attached tend to be more people pleasing people?
I certainly would expect that. I don't know that I've seen any research on that, but I would
Yeah,
certainly
it kind
say
of
that.
feels like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And tend to be women more than men, although men can do it too.
Mhm.
And it the other thing is like from your people pleasing, if you're the people pleaser and you're just what are you doing? You're just trying to make everybody happy. What's wrong with that, right? What you don't understand sometimes is that that's very irritating to other people. Sometimes, a lot of times they reinforce it, especially if they're your kids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
Give me more. Give me more.
right, right. But if you're like dating or in another adult relationship and you're the one that's always, oh, I don't care, whatever you want, dear, you're not fully participating in the relationship. You're not showing up in the relationship as an equal partner.
Yeah.
And then that's very off-putting to other adults. So that's something to keep in mind, that you don't want. I mean, you're trying not to be off-putting, but kind of in your attempts, you're doing it.
Well, I mean, it's like it's lovely to go with the flow, and it's good to be flexible, and it's also good to again know what you want and be able to share who you are and take a stand for that,
Yeah.
and not just acquiesce, because that puts a lot of pressure, I would think, on the other person to have to make all the decisions and to be the only one that's receiving. And there's also something really important, I think, is that men need to feel like they have value, they have purpose. And if they're always being showered and given to, and women are not able to say, oh, yes, I will receive you now, it's like hitting a wall. And that can be so frustrating for men. Where do I fit? And I see this often with the women I work with. It's like, these amazing, powerful, successful women. And they're like, I don't get it. I'm really having a hard time connecting. And it's because they're so in their masculine and they've got it, and they're not able to take it in. They're not
Yeah.
able to receive anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
how do you back off? How do you let other people do it? And I think a really good sort of example could be, especially since we're just now through the holidays, right? And many of us had parties of some sort. And if you hosted a party, how much did you include other people? And how perfect did you feel like everything had to be?
Mm.
And then in all of the, not letting other people help and all of that, everything has to be set up perfectly. Did you really connect with other people? Did you kind of get everything done and just collapse in a heap in total exhaustion?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like if you're to use that as sort of your model, it's like, how are you letting other people in on the process, which, by the way, allows you to connect with them earlier in the process rather than doing everything and then, oh, now I get to go connect. Right.
Yeah.
And then can you ease off your perfectionism a little bit, not have, all the things decorated properly, all of the utensils match,
Yeah.
just let it go, because it's not about that at the end of the day. It's about, are we connecting in a heartfelt, genuine way?
I love that you brought that up. And as you're speaking, what I'm hearing is there's a high price to people pleasing.
Yeah.
There's You're missing out on the deep connection if you have to be so perfect and do everything for everyone. You're not letting somebody in and having them feel like they have value, they have something to offer. People pleasing is exhausting, like constantly having to worry about the other person. So do you see that there's a connection between codependency, somebody who's constantly worrying about the other person and making sure they don't get triggered, and someone who people pleases? It kind of feels like it's the same thing, but I'm wondering from your perspective.
Yeah. So I would put the codependency further out on the end of that people pleasing spectrum.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
because so what happens with around codependency is often what the pattern that I see is you've got a childhood history of being around chaotic adults, one or more chaotic adults. So you don't ever really quite know which adult's going to show up, the nice one or the mean one, right? The sober
Yeah.
one or the drunk one, that kind of thing. And so you learn to be very concerned about how other people are feeling, and to try to make sure that they're okay, because that's how you know you're going to be okay. And that is what you got to do when you're a kid in that environment. It's adaptive, and yes, that's what got you through that situation. Problem is, the lessons we learn in childhood don't die easily. We learn them very well, right?
Yeah.
So it takes some unraveling to kind of break that pattern of, I need to make sure everybody else is okay.
Yeah.
And a real awareness on your part of where that pattern comes from and how it looks.
Yeah.
And then self-compassion to yourself if you're going to try to break that pattern, because it is so incredibly scary to
Yeah.
do that. You'll have a small child inside of you screaming, no, 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 this could kill me. And not, I mean, almost literally.
Yeah.
So because as a small child, if you weren't taken care of, it was a lot more risky to you. So
Scary.
yeah.
Scary. I can speak from my own personal experience. My mom was very sick when I was a kid, and she had to take a lot of medicine. And I remember thinking, which mom am I going to have? Is she going to be the happy, fun one, or is she going to be the scary one? And I
Yeah.
found myself being on guard, and I took that experience into a lot of my relationships until I did the shadow work, because that little girl inside of me was like, I got to make sure I'm not going to have the scary, wicked one, because that one yells and that one makes me feel like unloved. Or am I going to have the one that's going to love me up? I mean, I brought that in until I did the healing work. So I totally understand what you're talking about, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So part of that whole process of feeling into the other people and making sure they're okay, part of that process is the people pleasing, right? Because I need to make sure that you're
Right. Right. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is the people pleasing is a strategy
yes.
to kind of calm the waters of the potential scary person or the unknown. Let me just make sure, if I'm the good little girl and I do all the right things, then whether it's the happy mommy or the scary mommy, I will be safe. So
Right.
again, it comes back to what you said about having compassion for ourselves, because we're doing the best we can. So I'm curious, Julie, what might you offer to the soul sister, like one tip or tool? You mentioned being aware that there is a pattern. Is there something that someone can do right now to start to unravel this, to start to shift this people pleasing pattern, if you will, that keeps showing up, the behavior of it?
Yeah. So whenever I look at how do we change our patterns, I always start with just noticing the pattern, right?
Yeah.
Just notice it and acknowledge it. But then if noticing only takes you so far, right?
Yeah, first step.
Okay.
First step. That's what I always say. You got to see it first before you can do anything about it.
Right.
First step, but a lot of people stop there. Oh,
Stop
I
there.
see I have this pattern. Now
Right.
what?
Right. And sometimes we end up in a place of, oh, well, I'm a people pleaser, I can't help it. Right. Or I'm a whatever, I can't help it. This is
Right.
just,
They identify that this is
yeah.
just the way it's going to
Yeah.
be.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. We actually do change, we grow. And if we aren't growing, like we're kind of dying, and you're either growing or dying, right? So let's
Yeah.
grow. Let's continue to grow. So identify it, and that's good. And you do need to do a bit of a deep dive into figuring out all the ways that it's showing up.
Mhm.
And it can be subtle. So get the ones that are obvious first, but then keep exploring. Is it in subtler ways? But the first step I would send somebody on once they're starting to notice this is to start to examine what they want. And it might at first just be well, I let the other person have their way, but was that good for me? Right.
Good
But then,
question. Yeah.
then it can start to take on a a question of, well, what do I want? Like, what would the way I want it to be? And I often like just go back to the scenario where you and your partner are trying to figure out where to have dinner or what to have for dinner, but let's go to the restaurant, right? What restaurant do you want to go to? And what do we say? If we're a people pleaser, we say, oh, I don't care, you decide, right? What if you took a chance and you picked? Well, maybe you don't really care, because a lot of times these things aren't the important part. The important part is going out and having a meal with our partner. And we don't care whether that's over Vietnamese or Italian or Mexican, really. So, but express a preference. And if you don't have a preference, pick one. Then when you're at the restaurant, ask yourself, did I like this choice? Right? So we need to do that check in with ourselves, because you're out of practice. You don't know what to pick. So pick one and then ask yourself, was this the one I like? And then next time maybe you pick another one, and is this what I like, right? Same way with what's on the menu. Because, sometimes we're at the Italian restaurant we wanted to go to, but we don't know which of the 5 dishes we really want. And it can be hard to decide. Well, pick one and then ask yourself, did I like that? Was that good? And so through that practice of these small little things in our life, we start to learn what our preferences are.
Yeah.
And then something magic will happen. You might not know exactly how to do this, but you'll start to know what you want. And then you can't help but say that at times.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And what I also love about that example is the stakes aren't that high.
Right.
It's a great way to start to kind of tune in and go, well, what do I want to eat? Where do I want to go? It's not like huge decisions, and you're not pulling the plug from giving to your partner in some of the ways that you've been giving. It's a great way to start, and I love that. And to be gentle with yourself too. I mean, these are like deeply ingrained patterns. And also, if you have been dating somebody for a while or in a relationship for a while, it's going to potentially throw a little bit of a curveball into it. So slow and steady and getting to know yourself. I love that. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that you also have a really special gift for this Soul Sister People Pleasing Masterclass bundle, which is filled with some golden nuggets. Do you want to share a little bit about what this gift is? And we'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. So I have a 30-minute class with how to identify your people pleasing and overgiving, because they're kind of related to each other. How to identify it and the steps to take to overcome it. And then, because as you're going through this process, you're working on this, you're going to run into a couple of problems. One is you're going to have to set a boundary and or say no to somebody, right? So
no,
I know no is a dirty word if you're a consummate people pleaser, right? But so I've got a 1-hour interview around boundary setting with an expert in boundary setting.
Nice.
And it's a really good interview, all the ins and outs and nuances of boundary setting. And then I put together an effective communication guide, because if you have something you need to communicate and you don't know how to do it, you can really kind of mess it up. And you want to do it in a respectful, kind way. So this is a guide that can walk you through that process. And at the end, you'll have a little script you can use.
That's great.
Then bring the difficult topic up and have the conversation.
Oh my God, there's so much in there. That's amazing. And the whole no thing, I love that that's in there too. I always say that if you don't say no to someone else, you're saying no to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, we have to be with that. It's like, wow, if I keep saying yes to everybody, what am I not saying yes to myself for? And how to do that with grace. And I love the whole script idea as well. So what an amazing gift. We'll definitely make sure that it's in the show notes. Any last comments or shares around this huge topic for this woman who's opening her heart and wanting to partner with somebody?
Yeah, it's hard. I want to let everybody know that people pleasing is a thing for a reason. And don't go too overboard with, I don't people please anymore. Like, we do want to give to other people. We do want to show up in kind, generous ways. The key is, am I able to ask for what I want? And can I say no or set boundaries? And if you
Yeah.
got those on board, then give away, right? Just give to other people. If you can't do those things, then you're likely to overdo the people pleasing.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it's a journey, it's an unfolding, it's getting to know you, learning how to build these muscles, and your free gift is going to totally be supportive in that realm. Dr. Julie, thank you so much. Thank you for spending some time with us on this really important topic, because we all deserve to receive love and not just be spilling over all of this giving, giving, giving. And I really also want to just underline what you've said a couple times, which is giving is great. It's wonderful. And we need to have healthy boundaries around it as well.
Yeah.
So we get to get the goodies too. So I love that. Thank you so much for being here today. This was so special, as always.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right, Soul Sister, that's our episode for today. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the YouTube station, please do so you do not miss an episode. And if you got value out of this, please share it with a soul sister. I'm sure you know at least one person that overgives. And again, if you're on the Apple podcast, you could like it, maybe even write a review. Have you been listening to some of these amazing episodes over time, or maybe just this one? Write a review, because this is how we also get to reach more people, reach more sisters that could really use these tips and tools and strategies to have magnificent love in the second half of life. All right, that's it for today. Mwah!